Hello friends, Denny Pruto here with a lesson on the origin of your soul. This lesson is a complement to and extension of the Westminster Shorter Catechism lesson in which the Catechism asks, how did God create man? God created man, male and female, after his own image, in knowledge, righteousness, and holiness, with dominion over the creatures. This is the appropriate place to ask the question, how did your soul originate? After all, God is a spirit, and you also have a soul or spirit. You have a soul that will never die. And how did this soul come into existence? Well, first of all, your soul, or the soul of Adam, came into existence by the direct creation of God. Listen, if you would, to Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. Then the Lord God formed man of the dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being, or a living soul. By the breath of God, having already created his body, God breathes into man life, a soul. And so by the direct creation of God, the soul of Adam is created. But then there's an interesting caveat, because when God creates Adam, the woman, as Paul says, comes out of the man. Verse 21 in Genesis 2. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. Then he took one of the ribs and closed up the flesh at that place. The Lord God fashioned into a woman the rib which he had taken from the man, and brought her to the man. Verses 21 and 22 in Genesis chapter 2. God causes a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he takes a rib out of Adam's side, and out of that rib he fashions the woman. What is the origin of the soul of the woman? Her body obviously comes from the body of Adam. But nothing is said about God breathing into the body of Eve the breath of life so that she becomes a living soul. No. Her complete being, it appears, is taken out of Adam. She derives her life, body and soul, from Adam. And so now we have two different views with regard to the creation of the soul. Is the soul a direct creation of God? Is your soul a direct creation of God, as in the case of Adam? Or is your soul derived from your parents, as in the case of Eve's soul being derived from Adam? You see two different views. And another text that is at issue here is Zechariah chapter 1, or chapter 12, and verse 1. The burden of the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Well, this seems to be a reference back to the Genesis narrative. In the beginning, the Lord created the heavens and the earth. And as we've already discussed, after the heavens and the earth are created, a general statement in Genesis 1:1, the text zooms into the earth. And Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 indicates that the earth was formless and void. And God undertakes the task of bringing the earth into a condition which is habitable for human beings, which are the crown of creation, or who are the crown of creation. And so, how does God bring the human soul into existence? Zechariah 12:1. Thus declares the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. One camp insists that the soul is directly created by God, and that's the meaning of the text, and forms the spirit of man within him. The other camp insists, no, God utilizes means. God uses the means of procreation of parents to bring both body and soul of the child into existence. There's the creation side, and the other side is called traducianism. And the word traducian is taken from a Latin term which means root or branch, that the life of the child comes from the root of the parents. And so the parents bring the soul of the child into existence. Now there are a couple of questions that arise as a result of these two different positions. We understand as medical and scientific knowledge concerning procreation has developed, as Christians we understand that life begins at conception. And when a child is conceived in the womb, life begins. From this perspective, we would say that when there is one or only a handful of cells present, the soul is also present. If you take the view of creationism, or the direct creation of the soul from the hand of God, you could ask the question, when is the soul introduced to the body being formed in the womb? Well, we can't really answer that question. From the traducian perspective, the soul is present immediately upon conception. Well, the counter-argument would be that this weighs in against, the traducian position weighs in against and would be opposed to the sinless perfection of Christ, because Mary would carry the sinfulness of Adam in her body, and therefore sinfulness would be introduced to the soul of Jesus. That would be the argument. But arguing against this creation position, we can simply say, no, that the sinfulness of Mary is pushed aside and pushed down so that it is ineffective in the conception of Mary, or in the conception of Jesus in the womb of the Virgin Mary. After all, the conception of Jesus in the womb of the Virgin Mary is indeed a miracle. And part of the miracle is that sin is not carried from Mary to the baby Jesus. Well, here are the two sides then. The question further that might be asked is, if God creates each soul individually, does God create fallen souls that are merged with the bodies of little babies being formed in the womb? Well, we would never say that God creates fallen, sinful souls. No. Our fallen nature comes from Adam. And it's much more logical for us to understand that our fallen nature, including the fallenness of our souls, proceeds from Adam. And we receive a fallen nature from our father Adam. This is the biblical understanding. And therefore, I am of the position that the Traducian perspective is very likely the better perspective to understand the origin of the human soul. How did God create man? God created man, male and female, after his own image, in knowledge, righteousness, and holiness, with dominion over the creatures. Well, in the beginning, yes, God created Adam's soul directly. Eve received her soul from Adam. And how do we receive our souls? We receive our souls through natural generation and through conception in the womb of each of our mothers. This is, it seems to me, the biblical perspective. And this is the best way to understand Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 1. Thus declares the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. How does he do this? He does this using means through natural generation, through childbirth. Thanks for listening.